Okay, here we go. Hey everyone, welcome. We are so excited to have you here. This is going to be an awesome webinar. This is the first one for the demand community. Very, very exciting. I know we've got some folks that may not be demand community members. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about it, I just dropped the link, into host and panelists. I just dropped the link into the general chat. But as we get started, we want to know who's here. So please put your name in the chat. Who are you? Where are you coming from? What are you most excited to learn about? Remember, make sure your chat is set to everyone, as I just experienced. Don't put just hosts and panelists. And we'll get started here in a few minutes. Hey, Jennifer, so great to see you. Another Texan. Whoop, whoop. Love that. So very, very exciting. I'm excited to meet everyone. I know we've got a great crew. Another person from Texas. This is great. Very fun. This is gonna be a really great conversation. And if you're interested in dropping this in the chat as well, we would love to hear, how did you hear about this event? I'm very, very curious. Are you in the demand community? Did you see it in one of our emails? Let us know. That'd be really great. David, looking at you, would love to hear from you. Okay, so Nick, how's your day going so far? As we're waiting for more folks to hop in.
It's certainly been a week, but I can see the finish line. But the day is going really well.
glad to have that. Yeah, I keep forgetting that tomorrow's Friday, you guys. It's gonna be very exciting. I keep forgetting that. So cool. Thank you everyone for putting your info. Make sure that your chat is turned to everyone instead of just hosts and panelists. And we're gonna kind of get.
I did the same thing.
To kind of mess that up.
I can't follow directions, so I'm gonna have to do it 13 times.
I'm in marketing.
I feel like it wasn't an email I sent, but who knows? Awesome. Very excited. Can't wait to meet everyone that's here. Today's conversation, I'm just going to jump into some housekeeping. We'll go into some intros, kind of review why you're here. Many of you may be like how I am. I register for events all the time and kind of forget why I was interested in them to start off with. So we'll briefly go over that, do maybe like a little bit more housekeeping and just jump into the conversation. So for today's call/webinar, we want this to be super interactive. This is really designed to give you the answers that you need, that you can take to your team immediately. So if you have a question, there's a little box at the main bar at the bottom that says Q&A. Feel free to drop them in there. We'll be answering them in real time. And if it's not super relevant to exactly what we're talking about right then, we'll answer it at the end. And if you've got questions that you want other people to answer as well, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll just keep going through there. There's going to be two folks helping us out in the chat today, myself, and then we've got the awesome Ryan that is coming from Qualified. Nick, I don't know if Ryan's in here yet, if he wants to give a little shout out in there.
I think he's in here.
Okay,
Ryan Schwartz on my team is a digital marketing manager and also a metadata power user. So I'm happy to have him on the call.
Awesome. Well, very excited. He will drop in here in a second, and it looks like one of the links isn't working super great, so I'm just adding that. We've got a bunch of community members that just posted that. So, okay. I guess we should probably kick off with some introductions. Kamala, if you want to kick us off, that would be great.
Sure. Kamala Thompson, VP of Marketing at CaliberMind and host of the Revenue Marketing Report podcast. I actually started out my career in operations, spent 15 years spanning all of RevOps. So happy to be here.
We are happy to have you here. And I know you're pretty excited about talking about attribution. So
Yeah, people's eyebrows already coming out.
We're excited to have you a part of it. Jason, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Jason Widup. I'm VP of Marketing here at Metadata. Very similar background probably to Kamala's. Most of my career in marketing operations at large companies, and so that's where I've got my experience with attribution, is trying to do it over and over and over again. yeah, so now running the marketing team here at Metadata for about the last 3 years or so. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I'm a data nerd for sure, so excited about the topic.
Awesome. We're glad you're here. And Nick, and I know you just got a promotion, so we're very excited to hear about that. So we'll give you a little shout out for that, but I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, my name is Nick Duke, Senior Director at Digital Marketing here at Qualified. And Jason took my introduction. I'm also a data nerd, believe it or not. Data is the fuel to any digital strategy. So really excited to talk through attribution today. I come from a background in startups. So my experience with attribution is, I think, more of a grassroots experience. It's trying to build it from the ground up. So really interested to hear everyone else's point of views and how they're doing things and making things work on their end. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're excited. And once again, congratulations. That's huge for your promotion.
Thank you.
Very exciting. So, okay, well, like I said, I want to make sure this is super valuable for everyone who's here. Please get comfortable dropping stuff in the chat. Once again, there's a Q&A box at the very bottom. Please drop your questions in there. We've got a few questions already, a little bit of a roadmap we're going to go through, talking about, one, how do we even define attribution? How are we using it in our own organizations? We've got 3 very different companies here. What are some issues that we're seeing with attribution? Should you even have an attribution model, the different types of models, what can and can't be tracked in attribution, and literally everything in between. I'm sure I'm missing some things also. So as we get started here, I think it's super helpful for us to just kind of kick off the conversation with how are we even defining attribution or even using it in our own organizations. Nick, since you're the last one to introduce yourself, I'll let you kick that conversation off. So what does that look like for you guys?
Awesome. Thank you. So attribution to us, again, is really the paint to the full picture of marketing performance. We want to understand not only what's driving pipeline at the end of the day, most importantly, what's moving the business forward, but we also want to understand the journey that takes place before that conversion happens. And to a demand marketer, I think that's the most important thing to understand. That helps us adjust the front end of our campaigns. It helps us adjust our audiences. It helps us adjust our targeting, our geos, everything that we need to keep the campaigns working effectively and efficiently is all being uncovered through attribution on the back end. And that's kind of how we approach it at Qualified. And we're really laser focused on that pre-opportunity journey through attribution, which is something that's relatively new for us with the last few quarters.
I love that. Kamala, what about yourself? What does that look like for you guys?
Ooh, so we are known as an attribution company. So of course we use it. And I think a lot of people who love to hate it are also using it. They use single or, first or last touch and don't realize they're already using attribution. So from my standpoint, in my board deck, I have 4 charts. It's overall engagement, lead volume, pipeline contribution, which is multi-touch attribution, and then revenue contribution, which is multi-touch. So happy to dig into that more, but I've found it's all about the data points you are including and what argument you're trying to solve. So if you're trying to prove your contribution and you're just looking at marketing data, you're probably going to get into an argument. And I'm very fortunate in that everybody agrees with my information and I get a lot of nodding instead of arguing.
That's nice. That's nice. Should I go next, Katie?
Probably.
I was trying to save you from having to, and Jason, yeah, I'll try and take my cue. So let's see. We use it very basically in our efforts. And I agree with Kamala. So it's like, I always say, you might love to hate it, but if you're reporting any numbers at all, like you're using some kind of attribution, right? Because how do I report on any channel data, right? If I am not using some kind of attribution. And so whether or not you love it or hate it, you're using it. And so unless you're just maybe don't have to do any reporting, then I'd be like, how's that working out? So yeah, we use it pretty basic. I'd say we focus on, just like your standard last touch for most of our website metrics. Lead source, we look at first touch and lead source detail. Excuse me. But we like to have them all at the ready so that we can look at different ones, you know, and just kind of say and make sense of it in different ways. And so like looking at first touch and last touch together, you can get some, you know, inferences there. Looking at, you know, like the last, last non-direct touch and comparing that to, you know, the last touch and kind of seeing what those differences are. So I love kind of having lots of models at the ready and then being able to just look at what they tell you and then start to make some, you know, some insights from that. So we probably do more of the basic stuff, you know, right now at Metadata. We're not doing a lot of that, like looking at a bunch of different models, but every once in a while we do.
So you kind of brought up something that we're going to be jumping into, and it's the different types of attribution models. And I know that there were some questions submitted ahead of times that talked about the different types of models. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm sure Kamala and Nick will want to add some models that may be very traditional or stereotypical and some that may be a little creative as well.
Yeah, and I don't know all of them, I'm sure. The ones that I guess like more than others, I don't know. Or so we all know first touch, last touch, I think, right? That's the most basic, you know, sometimes you add to it, you know, some time delay, right? So like last touch, 30 days, last touch, 7 days, you know, those kinds of things. So sometimes you add a time element to it, but you know, I like things like time decay that get a little bit more sophisticated, you know, when you're thinking like the touches from a lot longer ago maybe have less weight than the touches that are more recent. I kind of like, what is it, U-shaped, I think, where, you know, it's like a U, you get more credit for the beginning ones and more credit for the end ones, and then the middle ones kind of take a little bit less. So there are some in there that I kind of like. And again, they could just tell slightly different stories. But those are the ones, you know, and there's W-shaped where it's like the ends and the middle, you know, and I'm missing a bunch of them, I'm sure. But Kamala, what other ones, what did I miss that you use?
Well, I'm gonna
probably.
I'm gonna throw a hot take out there. A lot of people have a tendency to really think about how they're going to engineer their model before they think about what question am I answering with this model, and different models answer different questions. And then the other piece is, if I'm trying to answer marketing's contribution to the business, do I need to look at more than just campaign data? And the answer to that is yes. So, I mean, there are a lot of models out there. I see a lot of people jump straight into over-engineering the model. To be honest, the most important aspect is the underlying data clean, and are you looking at the right data points? So are you deduplicating? Do you have a bunch of lead records hanging out there that you're not considering? Are you over-reliant on sales data entry like opportunity contact roles? Once you fix those problems, then you can think all about the model. I just use even weighted, and that's each touch gets an equal amount. But there's a ton out there. I'm more concerned about, do I have the right data points, and does the rest of the executive team agree with me?
Yeah, and going off that a little bit. So when you're in the beginning stages of developing and implementing an attribution model, it's so hard to pick because you don't want to limit yourself to looking at data a certain way. You want to be able to understand what's sourcing pipeline, what's converting pipeline, what's converting opportunities, what's sourcing those opportunities, and everything between. If you pick one like a last touch attribution model, then you're really restricted to only understanding what's that last step in that buyer's journey. Whereas if you were to pick at this in the same breath, the first touch attribution, you're only understanding where that's coming in the door. So it really is hard to pick. And like Jason said, there's so many out there, and you know, I'm a fan of time decay too. How do you set that up efficiently? How is it going to work and really give you an effective view of what's going on?
So one of the questions we just got brought in is, how do you all actually implement the multiple models? This person's struggling with Salesforce and kind of figuring that out. It sounds like all of you pretty much have different types of models. Kamala, it sounds like you're pretty gung-ho on one.
No, I use first and last touch as well.
You had that no ready to go. Yeah, I mean, excited to say no.
They answer different questions. So it depends on, am I presenting pipeline contribution to the board, or am I trying to figure out what is increasing awareness across our base? Yeah. Like that's going to be first touch. So it just depends.
That's good. So when it comes to implementing the multiple models, how are you actually doing that? And how are you getting that across in Salesforce, it sounds like?
Well, we use Caliber Mind. I would recommend not just using what's available in your CRM or marketing automation platform and looking at the tools out there if you want to have multiple models. They're pretty restrictive.
Yeah. And I've been dreading this question because we do it with very manually at this point in time. We have not decided on any sort of attribution tool aside from using Salesforce with Qualified together, but that creates the need for pulling a lot of data manually and matching a lot of data manually and really comparing timestamps. What happened when, at what part of the buyer's journey, what resulted in that journey. It's a very manual process. I'm very thankful every day that Ryan Schwartz is on my team because he's a huge help in getting that done. But it's really valuable at the end of the day. But we need to figure out how to do this at scale.
So for those folks that have no money, Jason, what would you recommend? You've got bare bones, but you've got to get this done. What would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, then you're probably in Google Analytics and you're just setting up several different views, you know what I mean? So that you've got like a first touch view, a last touch view, you've got an evenly weighted view, that's free. And then Salesforce. So that's what I was gonna say. We actually do it in Salesforce sometimes. So like you can do, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in Salesforce, right? But like a basic Salesforce operator like myself, you know, you can set up fields unlike lead source, right? Lead source detail, you can set up fields that track the original one, you know, that track the most recent one. So you can actually set up different lead source and lead source detail fields in Salesforce. And then you can also, and what we do also is you can just basically use Salesforce campaigns a lot, you know, so you use a lot of Salesforce campaigns, and as leads, you know, hand raisers, et cetera, as they do things, you basically put them into different campaigns and different campaign statuses, right? So it's like, we did an event. Well, you have everybody you sent it to, and you have people that registered, and then you have people that attended, and each of those is a different status in the campaign. And then you can create reports off of those things. And so it's very manual, like we were talking about, very manual. I've never had the luxury of using an off the shelf, like an actual, a dedicated attribution software. And so like, I'm not the best person I would never shit on attribution software because I'm like, I've never used them, so I can't. We tried to build our own at Tableau. That was hard and didn't work. And so like, I was there, I think we spent a year on this project. I spent $250,000 literally with like slalom consultants. And we actually hired this like PhD researcher from like some university. The only thing I remember of it is we used Markov chain modeling. And then that's all I remember. And I remember the output of that was like, oh, great, paid search got, you know, this tiny little bit of credit and this tiny little bit of credit. And then it just wasn't enough to like, it was such a black box, I think, that my leadership was like, okay, great, the black box says this, you know?
That's
like,
exactly the problem with machine learning is anytime you whip that out, everybody's like, whoa, black box. And I think it has its uses, but you have to trust the underlying data first. I've had the good fortune of using several different attribution platforms. They are not all created equal. Ask a lot of questions. Try to start with, what am I trying to answer first and foremost with the rest of the business? Is this for campaign optimization, or am I trying to prove marketing's worth? And then go from there. But I would say I love Salesforce. Started out as an admin. That's where my career started. You can do a lot of things. You are going to be beholden, though, to the primary contact on the opportunity and how you're tracking lead source and all of that, and opportunity contact roles. So the way to get around opportunity contact roles is to really look at the solutions out there on the market.
Yeah. In my experience with.
Sorry, Nick. It's like I was complaining about contact roles. Go ahead.
My experience with an out of the box tool for attribution has been overwhelmingly positive, but some of the biggest limitations that I see using a tool out of the box is really attribution only kicks in after that conversion happens, after we know who that person is, after we have them in our system. To track them from conversion to lead to opportunity to closed one. That's the traditional attribution journey. What, you know, I'm super interested in as a digital marketer is what happens before that. Like I mentioned earlier, is how can we uncover and paint the picture of the buyer's journey before that conversion happens? To me, that's the most important part of that journey. So that's what we've been trying to build manually, and you can imagine how tough that is.
Yeah. So So attribution is typically dividing dollars across interactions for an opportunity. We also track engagement, which starts with anonymous web visits, intent data, all of that. So kind of different. So if you're looking, I would research more engagement than attribution. But yeah, both have their uses, absolutely.
And what we've been doing is, everyone comes to the website, but they're always anonymous. You don't know who that person is. And it's how do we map that person? If we know using third-party intent tools, what company, what account they're coming from, how do we map them to that account in our Salesforce instance? Then that helps us begin to track that journey at the account level at the very least. And that's been really interesting for us at Qualified.
Are you using
sorry, go ahead, Kamala. Go ahead.
Are you using any de-anonymization tools?
To the best of our ability, we're trying to identify who that person is, but we know, how loosely that's connected.
Yeah, we've had decent luck with Clearbit Reveal. I mean,
yeah, we use Clearbit, Demand Base, the heavy hitters.
Yeah. Well, then you got it covered.
Well, and it gets like it gets harder too. Excuse me, when you have gated, right, content or ungated content.
Yes.
So if you're following a strategy of ungated content, then you don't have people filling out a form,
Yeah.
and so you don't have to fill out the form. And it's not so much that they fill out the form, but that form fill actually creates that connection to their cookie, right? So then all their previous behavior, then now you can associate that when they were anonymous, you can associate that with that person. And so when you don't do gated content, or like maybe you're capturing leads through Drift, or another technology that might not set a cookie at the same time and let you know and track that back, it poses even more challenges. So then and I haven't figured out exactly how to solve it yet, but one of the things is when they finally do convert somewhere, making that connection so that you have all that historical data, but waiting until that conversion. And if you're not gating content, that conversion is going to happen later, at some point. And so makes it a little bit harder.
We do use web tracker functionality with Clearbit Reveal and do track all of those web visits because, like you, we use an ungated content strategy. I think some of the challenges we're going to see more and more are the privacy first browser development and EU cookie policies, any kind of legislation. It's just going to make it more and more difficult to make that de-anonymized. But yeah, I hear you. It is a common affliction.
So Linda asked a really great question, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer for this, but I'd love for us to take a crack at it. And it's, how are we fixing the contact role issue whenever it's a little bit of a non sequitur question, but as we're talking about like all the campaigns and trying to get attribution and getting the right data and gated versus non-gated content or ungated content, how are we fixing the contact role issue? Little side question for us.
The stick that I use to beat the sales reps. I mean,
you have one of those too, huh?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I have the contact roll stick. Yeah, and then the reps get beat with it when I come across an op without one. That's what I'm doing. I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, if you're beholden to Salesforce, it's the carrot and the stick. We drink our own champagne. We automatically look across all leads and contacts. So when salespeople ask me who I should enter the opportunity against, I get to say, I don't care. And it's very freeing, but it just depends.
Yeah, I think we've tried some automation rules, you know what I mean? That I don't think have worked incredibly well, but we did a push, like a big push, I don't know, a couple of months ago, where it was just like, hey, listen, like, we don't know what's going on. I'm not going to be able to deliver enough pipeline to you if you're not doing these things. And so please help us out. And
it's tough, and they all view it as SNAs or NSAs, non-selling activities.
Yeah,
it's really hard to get compliance.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, it'd be nice if somebody has somebody on this call right now has like, oh, I have this thing solved. Please let us know. Oh, okay, Kamala does. All right. We're going to be going longer on this webinar. Stay with us. Kamala, actually, let's sell your product a little bit. What, seriously, so like I'm interested. What sets, maybe take a couple minutes. What sets you, what's your biggest differentiator from other, because I know we don't want these to be salesy, but I'm actually interested since we're talking about this. What sets your guys' platform apart from other attribution solutions?
So we essentially function as a customer data platform. We're basically your build it yourself out of the box. So we have the data warehouse, we connect to all the source systems, we normalize along the contact and account record, regardless of whether they're a lead, contact, in your advertising platform, elsewhere. So you're really getting a more holistic view. We also out of the box include sales, product, website activities, so that if you're trying to sell it as marketing's contribution, the rest of the business can look at all the data points and go, okay. Instead of
transparency in there, like people
yes,
black box. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
yeah.
I won't buy black boxes anymore. It's just too hard to like trust it, and then it's
Yeah.
like, then if you have to sell it to leadership, it's like, but no, just trust it, like there's some hamsters in that wheel. The hamsters are smart. Don't worry. They're doing their job.
That's the thing.
I like the transparency.
Yeah. If you're using attribution to optimize campaigns, use whatever you want. If you're trying to sell to the rest of the business what marketing is doing, you have to have that cross-functional buy-in. You have to have buy-in from the executive team. And that's when it's so critical to look at the data coming in and out. So
yeah, totally.
Okay.
All right, what are we up on next, Katie?
Next question. What can and can't be tracked in attribution? And this kind of ties into Rachel's question as well about self-reported attribution, which I know is a very fun topic. So what do we think? What can we track? What can't we track? Can I get away with saying I brought this in and you guys pay me more money because of it? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think on our end, the bread and butter of attribution begins with any outbound link that you have control over. I mean, that's if you are placing advertisements.
Can you define control?
If the link is coming internally to an outward audience and you have the ability to append a UTM parameter to that link, that's the key to success with any attribution model. A UTM parameter obviously pulls in all the details that we need. What audience, what channel, what message, what piece of creative did this person engage with that brought them back to the site? And then that begins the journey of attribution with them to understand what they did following that first engagement. On the other hand, things, when we get into, and this is going to be a big conversation or big topic, I would think, is that dark funnel. Things like ad impressions, conversations, word of mouth, referrals from friends and colleagues, those things that, unless your sales team is laser focused on filling in that open text field in Salesforce saying, this is where I made first contact with this account, none of that is going to be trackable. We're not going to be able to report on that. That's going to be something that changes the behavior of that lead. And when we look at the data, we're not going to understand why that behavior was changed. So anything that you have control over, like an outbound link, an email, anything on your website, a partner's website, that's definitely what we want to focus on first. That's the low-hanging fruit in attribution.
Yep. Well stated. I think one of the reasons why people hate attribution so much is it was sold as the silver bullet that can do everything. And that was one of my commitments coming into Caliber Mind as somebody who had implemented multi-touch attribution several times, is to be extremely transparent about what it can and can't do. So I run a podcast. I don't expect to be able to track beyond key web visits that things are coming from there. That's okay. Like, the worst advice I've ever heard a marketer get is that if you can't measure it, don't do it. Keep doing it. There's things you can do, like measuring website conversion rates, lead traffic. Like, if there's some kind of correlation, just keep doing it. But yeah, there are absolutely some things you can't track. The problem with self-reported attribution, though, is we're humans, we're biased. We remember things, we forget things, and we're going to be biased towards the last thing we remember, not necessarily the first thing we did. So I think there's value in self-reported attribution, but it shouldn't be your single point of truth.
Yeah, it's another one. Like, we implemented self-reported, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe. And yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's another set of data, that you can look at and like tell some part of the story and get some insights from. But yeah, this like route with problems, the self-reported, right? Because it's like everyone types it the way they want. And we get this a lot often. I think it was, it's like, I think it was, it's like, okay,
it's not scalable.
Can't
You're
really
exactly right.
Yeah, and like not a lot of people fill it out, and we don't make it required, I don't think. And so the thing with what you can track and what you can't track. It's like, you can say you can track anything. You can track everything you want in there, but here's the deal. You have to have a trigger, and then you have to have an identifier, right? And so like the trigger is what thing happened, and like you can some digital trigger from that thing happening. And then that plus the identifier, how do I marry that to who took that action? And so like if you have those two things, you could literally track like, somebody getting a referral from a friend, if you could trigger off of that and have an identifier for them, but you really can't. And so it's most of these things like the word of mouth. I found a friend at a networking event, heard what they were doing. There's a new tool coming out actually that'll allow you to connect to LinkedIn and see all your LinkedIn connections that actually use a platform that you're interested in. I'm going to implement that on my site here pretty soon. And so like stuff like that, where you can, and that's the best attribute, that's the best marketing, right? Is the word of mouth. So like, that's the thing we all want. We want that word of mouth because, we all probably, especially before we buy a big ticket item, we're talking to somebody, somebody we know, somebody we trust. Do you use it? Do you get value from it? And that is not trackable. And so, but that's okay, because again, and this is my problem with attribution, is not with attribution itself. It's the like over reliance on it from some people. Some people are just like, we're just going to trust this thing with whatever it says. We don't do anything that it doesn't say, and then it's like, that's what I don't like. I like it when people are smart enough to know, like, listen, this is going to tell me a part of the story. It's an important part of the story, but I still have to use my gut, some instinct to like fill in the rest of it. And that's, that's really what that's my only real problem with attribution, I think, is like when people really think that, yes, this is going to give me every answer, and then I'll be able to like run my marketing programs and get better with them by just following that. And so
No. Yeah. I mean, it's a great tool when it comes to the things you can track and figuring out what's most effective, least effective. Totally agree with you though. Like, I'm at an attribution company. I do plenty of things that we can't easily track. And that's just how it has to go.
Yeah.
And something we keep an eye on in parallel with our attribution model is correlations. How do we, if we're doing something out of the box or at a big event, do we see spikes in organic web traffic? Do we see spikes in demo requests? Can we connect the two? No, we can't at the end of the day, but we can take those correlations and run with them and have a good idea of the performance we've been able to drive from things that are not usually trackable.
Yeah, in the spring, I tried something because I had some extra money, which I don't now. I had some extra money in the spring. I was like, I'm going to do some out of home. I'm going to do some out of home advertising. I'm going to see if I can actually see a lift in geo, right? In the geography data of people coming to my site. And so I did a little buy, bought like 2 LED trucks that drove around the B2B marketing summit, I think in LA or something. And I mean, it wasn't huge, but I was like, oh, hey, there's some LA visits, and it was kind of interesting to see, to be able to like put those things together. And that's happening more too. Like a lot of the technology is just getting better. If you guys dig into this technology around out of home and stuff nowadays, it's crazy. And even connected TV, it's a little creepy, it's like,
oh yeah.
So there, you can actually really attribute, here's how connected TV works from what I understand. So first of all, you target by email address on connected TV. So if you can translate, business stuff into an email address, it's just you upload email addresses into the targeting platforms, and that's how it targets. But then when an ad is shown on connected TV, it actually goes out and it sees your whole home network, and it actually traps the device IDs of every device on your home network, and it stores that back at that company. And then if any of those device IDs goes and visit your website, they track that as a conversion count. Nice. Wow. I was like, wow, that's very interesting and also a little scary at the same time. But yeah, so attribution is probably getting better, you know what I mean, with some of these types of things.
Yeah, we love looking at that correlation theories, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to bring your executive team a correlation theory and ask for more money. But it's something we like to do either way.
Help support it at least a little bit, right?
Right.
Yeah. Probably was not worth my what I spent at all. It was just I think what it was worth is the video I got of the thing driving around LA.
Well, Nick, kind of to what you're talking about a little bit of, instead of the theory, we need to be bringing quantitative data. So if you can kind of talk a little bit more about the value of attribution, not just with the quantitative data, but more of like the story that we can tell and what that actually means and how we can kind of manage up based off that information and get more money, because it sounds like that's what most of us would like. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, in kind of what we talked about in the beginning of the webinar is that the story that attribution tells through the numbers is, to me, the most valuable thing that a digital marketer or a demand marketer can have to support the work they're doing. If we always have ideas, we always have theories, we think we know what's going to work, but until we have data behind that to either prove or disprove that, then we have nothing to fall back on. We have nothing to bring to our executive team and say, this is what's impacting pipeline, and this is exactly how we know it's impacting pipeline. Without that data, it just, again, stops in the front end. We know what's working. CTRs are cool, CPCs are neat, impression volume, that's fun. But at the end of the day, it's what's moving the business forward. And we have to be able to connect data to that. That, to me, is the biggest value of attribution and the most important part of my job.
That is so well put. Yeah, I mean, we also layer on persona tracking, and we track key website visits. My sales team, speaking of stories, was convinced that the people on the website were in operations. So everything was very tactical. We look at the attribution data by persona, VP CXO hitting the page first because they're the ones who decide whether or not to move forward with the project. And then they have people go do research. And it completely changed our content strategy. And I would say we disproved a myth at our company, and these myths are so common. It's really powerful to have some kind of information to do that beyond a gut check, because we all need to be artists. Then we need to use science to figure out whether it's something we repeat or stop putting effort into.
Yeah.
I really love that. Be science, then become artists with that too. That's very so poetic of you. I love
my
that.
one moment today. I'm going to take it.
Well, I'll ask you a question, Kamala. What do you have to say to folks who don't believe in attribution? Because I know that there's some folks on this call that are like, attribution's complete shit, means nothing. We can kind of falsify it and make it become the story that we want. What do you say to folks like that?
I mean, if you're trying to falsify data and say what you want. So statistics lie. We've all heard the quote. It's true. But if that's your mentality, attribution probably isn't for you anyway. Like it needs to come from a place of, we're using this as a tool to help us gauge things, and it's an estimate. And that has to be just rote. It's an estimate. We're doing it this way. We all agreed to do it this way. And these are the numbers we're going to use going forward to make some core decisions. You also need the trust from the executive team that the numbers you are reporting are accurate. And that's the only way they're going to trust you to do the things that aren't trackable. So if they don't believe your numbers in the first place because you're kind of changing the dimensions of your chart to make things look a little better, that's the quickest way to completely blow up credibility. So
that's a great point. Yeah, I just want to second that. Like, don't use if you're getting into attribution only because people are questioning marketing's impact on like the bottom line, I don't think that's the right. Yeah, I don't think that's the right reason to do it.
No.
Yeah, you have to have, and just almost like everything, you want to have the right mentality going into it. And so also with reporting, it's just the best way. It's almost like a relationship, like a personal relationship. The best thing to do is just be raw honest with it. You know what I mean? Don't try and spin it, and if you think it's shit, then it's like, let's just say it's shit. And then like, what are we doing to make it better? Don't try and sprinkle some glitter on the crap, and like make it seem like it's better, because it's not. It's still crap with glitter on it.
Right.
And so just be true to yourself and like the reporting too. And if it's just like, man, these don't, and on the other side, if they don't make sense, also don't put them in, like, what you want to use some of your gut too as you're doing reporting. If it's like, oh yeah, it looks like we increased that conversion rate by, this actually happened to me once. I had an analyst, a really bad one, coming to me and say something ish like this. It was like, oh man, it looks like we really increased conversion rates by about 313,000%. I'm like,
sorry,
man.
If it doesn't smell right.
He was so serious too. I was just like, oh, that's sweet. That's
yeah.
cute. Probably didn't happen, but let's look at the data and see where we went wrong.
Right.
And just having a solid data, that's, leadership loves nothing more than data they can trust and believe in. So
Yep.
like really work hard to make that data as just clean, consistent, accurate. Even if it's telling a bad story, you want to tell it accurately, and if you can tell it accurately, people will trust you better. And then they'll actually trust, like Kamala said too, that you can solve it, because they're like, well, they're being raw honest about the situation. So they're seeing it right. They're not, confused in their mind. So they know it's not great, and here's their plan to fix it. And then, oh, look, they're doing that plan. And so I think that sends a good message.
Yeah. And if you're falsifying data, you have bigger problems in your attribution model. There's no doubt about that. But if somebody came to me and said, I don't believe in attribution, why does it make sense? Why do you use it? My answer would be, it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to be able to attribute every single brand touch point that marketing is working to create. But it at least gives us, even if it's a blurry picture, a picture. And that's what we have to work with. It's better than nothing at the end of the day. And we can't say it's going to be 100% perfect or accurate every time, but that's what we work every day to improve.
That's really great. We've got a really great question that we just got, and I think it's perfect. And it's kind of going into a great segue for the folks who want to simplify the attribution process and attribution in general. What's working for executives without going into the weeds of attribution? How do we simplify attribution and what's happening for our execs so we don't have to get into the true nitty gritty? What does that look like?
I mean, I think the result, so if you present it correctly, the result is fairly simple to understand. You're basically saying like, here's some of the paths, here's some of the channels with more credit, here's the introduce. So it's a pretty simple output, I think. But I think the most important thing is getting leadership to understand that your inputs are really solid and accurate. And so I think focusing on, hey, here's how we built the model, here's the data that we put into it, here's the checks and balances we did on that data, so we know it's accurate. So if they know that that part is accurate, the picture of what it's telling you can be made fairly simple. The insights, you basically just want to show the insights. But I think if you focus on that, the raw data inputs, I mean, at least this is what I think that will help grease the skids a little bit and get the leadership to like, oh, okay, I understand your inputs and I get that. And so I'm going to trust the outputs.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have 4 charts. That's it. And I start with bookings because we all know in marketing that it takes time for things to have an impact. If we ignore the state of the quarter as it ended and just jump straight to lead generation, we could have the best quarter ever and know that it's going to impact in the future. That's going to start an argument with our sales team because they think that you're glossing over what's happening today. So I think what's really important is get your numbers to tie out with how everybody else in the business is reporting it. Your bookings number and your pipeline numbers need to match what sales is saying. You also need to educate up and make sure that your marketing leader knows how to talk to the weak points in their data and what they can't track. So it's very important for them to be tight on the story. And it's okay to say, hey, I think we should walk through these slides together just to say some things back and forth, make sure that you can answer some of the questions I think are going to pop up because I see this, this, and this. Like arm them ahead of time would be the best advice I can give.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I think, the first step in getting buy-in from an executive team is making sure that your priorities are in line. Are the goals and objectives that you're trying to accomplish in line with the business's overall goals and objectives? Is the investment that they're letting us make in marketing in line with what they're wanting to accomplish? And once we have alignment on that, then we go back to our numbers and be, okay, how can we tell the story the best that fits this business objective? Where are our weaknesses? Where can we improve? Where are room for opportunity and growth based on what's working? That alignment with priorities and goals and objectives to me is really, really important.
Head's going to start rattling from agreeing with everybody.
So we've got about 10 minutes or so till we're going to kind of wrap up here. And we've got a bunch of questions still to go. Some we'll kind of save a little bit more till the end. But one of the questions that we had is, what would you say to someone who's starting the attribution journey, whether it's a newer marketing team or they've come into something established that doesn't have any type of attribution, what would you recommend for them? Like maybe first 3 steps.
Oh boy. Figure out what your company's measuring today and where the landmines are in your data. I think I see so many leaders come in and start promising specific KPI improvements and then finding out that that's not actually being measured and they don't know where the baseline is. So get, if you're new to an organization, figure out the current state and then you'll know exactly where to improve from there. Like, I get chills thinking about those statements that I've seen and then the outcome from that. It was never good.
Yeah, and I think understanding the capabilities of your marketing tech stack is probably the number one place to begin. That goes in line with keeping an open mind. You might have an attribution model that you would like to use or that you used in the past, but if that doesn't work, if it's not compatible with the tech stack that you have in place, then it's time to move on. So understanding the landscape, I think, is a great starting point.
I like to first align with sales on, well, I guess sales and leadership on how we're looking at attribution so that I'm not halfway in and I come to the table and then they just disagree with the model. So it's like getting buy-in from sales that like, hey, here's how we're going to report on our inbound pipeline, for example. Are you okay with this? So I like to start there and then, definitely understanding what your goals are and then focus on the inputs, the data inputs. Kamala was talking about that a lot. The outputs are only as good as the inputs. And so you really want to focus, and the inputs you can't go back and historically fix, but you can change the model. You can use different models on the data as long as your data is solid. So I always like focus on getting the input data really, really solid. And then one thing that is a little bit of a hack, which I kind of like, is if you can get somebody to click through an email from HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, just click through to your site. That actually creates the connection between their browser cookie and their name. And so then every time they're on the site from that point forward, you always know who it is. And so if you can, like a little hack I like to do every once in a while is like send out the most, you want to protect your brand, but something that's clickbaity a little bit, you know what I mean? But like on brand, but that is going to get everybody just like, oh, what's this? I'm going to click to their site, give them some value. You don't want them to be like disappointed and then all of a sudden they never click again. But that's a nice, easy way to just start getting your database connected, people's names connected with their browser cookie. And then you can do, attribution becomes maybe a little bit easier after that. So I like to do that sometimes too.
Taylor asked a really great question. Not sure if this applies, but do you think the new data-driven attribution model that Google recently rolled out tracks accurately or works better than other attribution models?
I'd have to know about it before I weighed in on it.
Great question.
That's a great question. Let me hold on. Everyone, hold on.
Let's Google it.
Let me see what Google.
I always encourage people to start with the question they're answering and whether or not the data points that are being included are going to answer that question. So again, if you're just looking at digital touch points and you're allocating dollars to that and you're not including sales, product, webs, just other pieces, shooting yourself in the foot. It just depends, again, on the question you're answering and whether or not the data going into it is right.
And I don't know if I trust Google enough to tell me where to spend my dollars, because I think I would trust CaliberMind more, because like I'm not spending more money with CaliberMind if it tells me like Google search, oh, look at this. Somehow Google search is like the best channel ever. Google tells me that,
You should put all your money there. Just put all the money there.
So that's my only hesitation, like trusting a vendor, like a vendor I spend money with on ads to tell me how my ads are performing is kind of the same problem I have with agencies a little bit. So yeah, I'd trust a third party.
Oh God, yeah. How do you define conversion?
And then Google doesn't see a lot of things too, or you'd have to maybe not over configure, but do a lot of work to get like every touch point into Google. And I don't know if we're talking data-driven attribution on like Google Ads or Google Analytics, but probably Google Ads, I'm guessing. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, I just dropped a link from the Google attribution models. I just pulled up a web page from Google about their ads in there. So I just dropped that in the chat.
Yeah. That's their ads.
Really great question, Taylor. Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end. We're running out of questions, which is great. We've got a few left from attendees that, if you guys are okay with it, love to kind of rapid fire with y'all. They're slightly non sequitur, so we're going to be shifting away from attribution a little bit more, but feel free to bring it back. We've got one from earlier in the conversation. Reed, Jason, your comment on campaigns. How do you decide what triggers adding someone to a campaign? And hot question is, how do you decide what actually is a campaign in Salesforce?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if we have like a hard and fast rule. I think anything really where if we know we can track somebody's attendance or, engagement with something, we want to try and do it. So for us, I'll just go through some of them. Anything from, like, we did a dinner last night in Boston at Inbound. Everybody that we sent it to, that registered, that attended, will all be in a campaign. We did Metadata Live, our customer event a couple of weeks ago. All the customers go in there because we want to see the impact on renewals, Gosh, any webinar, you guys registered for this, you're in a campaign, in Salesforce right now. So yeah, anything where we've got like lists of people.
Don't be scared.
Oh, no, don't worry. We don't.
Don't worry.
I'm going to be calling all of you tonight, so just yeah. Thank you for your information.
Make it a bobblehead.
And then I'll attribute it to this webinar. No.
Oh God! Yeah, and my brain goes straight to, what are you having for dinner? Oh,
yeah, but like lots of things. Yeah, Salesforce campaigns, lots of things. Even different stages of things too. But I think that's an important question, because here's one thing to think about, and I don't want to get overly technical with attribution, but when you're tracking different things, you can easily set it up to where if you set it up wrong, it's going to give all this credit to one thing. So you kind of want to be, and I don't know how to say this, maybe Kamala, you can help me explain this, but like, you want to be tracking things at the same kind of level. And I don't know how to better to say that, but so if, for example, like, let's say you had a registration event and an attendee event in your attribution model. Well, guess what? Registration and attendees, there's going to be two different things. Attendees are going to get, different credit than registrants. And how do you think about that? And so, like, it's almost like, Kamala, I don't know. I don't make sense, but I know what I'm saying, but I'm not making sense.
Yeah, where I see the biggest problems are when people are trying to incorporate outreach and are not just looking at proactive, what we call responses in Salesforce campaigns. Because if they're registered versus attended, that's kind of going to shake itself out, because you're really looking at pipeline for attribution. You're going to see a lower percentage of those registers move through. It's going to be the attendees most likely.
Right,
so
right.
That kind of proves itself out. But when you're thinking about what you're including and what you're not including, what I like to encourage people to do is not include anything that isn't a proactive interaction on their part with your brand. And that's anything you push to them. If they don't interact back with it by filling out a form or some other meaningful action, you're just making a lot of noise, and you're gonna, like you said, skew things. We send a ton of prospecting emails. If we included that, everything would be 100% prospecting email.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah, you want everything at like that same level of engagement. You know what I mean? With some, so it could have like a similar amount of impact, I guess. Yeah. And map those things against each other, with each other. Yeah. You can definitely set up attribution models and give yourself like super wrong answers. So, just be careful about that.
Now, Nick, you do like a form of hybrid attribution, and you stick everything in a Salesforce campaign to do that. Does someone have to perform an action to be given that attribution, or do you include like a web visit where someone doesn't convert?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's something that we're kind of actively working through and improving on our end as we speak. But we do actually attribute website visits to the buyer's journey. And we do that using our own product. We're able to uncover when somebody comes to the site using demand base, using Clearbit. We're able to identify the account that person's coming from. Sometimes we're able to identify the person that's actually on our site before they actually submit their information to us. So that's a super valuable leg up on the attribution journey. If we're able to actually connect, even if it's an anonymous visitor, to an account. because then we can understand the behavior of that account at the account level at the very least. So we are actually attributing just website visits, just website behavior to the attribution model.
Yeah, we actually do too. And then some intent signals are actually better than some website signals.
Absolutely.
So we incorporate that as well.
Oh, nice.
Well, folks, we've gone through all the questions, had a list of like 12 questions. We went through all of
Made
them.
it.
We did it. And for everyone that's still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I guess let's just wait like a minute or so or I guess probably like 10 seconds. And if anyone's got extra questions, drop them in the chat or the QA box right now. If you want to get connected to any of these folks, I'll be dropping their LinkedIns into the chat here really quickly as well. I guess as we're kind of wrapping up, seeing if anyone's got last minute questions, what would you say to someone who is just really struggling with attribution? If you could point them to one resource, what would that resource be? Nick, I'll let you kick it off. No time.
Wow, what a question. There's so many great resources out there. I think kind of going back to what Kamala said is that we need to understand what you're trying to accomplish. You can read up about attribution, you can read up on Caliber Mind and a bunch of other vendors out there that will help you accomplish attribution, but understanding what you're trying to accomplish, I think, is the number one goal there.
There was a article I found on, I think it might have been Visible. It was just like easy. Here's all the different normal attribution model types and a decent description of each with a little visual with it as well. I know that helped me out. I couldn't find it though. I went looking for it again today and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it's behind like a gate now or something. But anyway, if you can find it, great. And Kamala, you guys might have something like that too. Just sometimes it describes all the different models and when you would use them and what they're good for.
Yeah, we have a lot of free platform agnostic education materials.
And ungated, she said, so.
And ungated. So on our website, there's like a thought leadership area. There's playbooks. There's the podcasts we have people on all the time. We had a great webinar about why attribution's broken and how to fix it. Those are all great places to go to. Oh, and Triveni's so awesome.
Oh, nice. Oh,
what is marketing attribution? There you go.
Ask and you shall receive.
Are you tracking that link?
Hey, I don't see any UTMs on that thing.
Oh man, marketing humor always gets me.
Yeah. You're okay.
Will the referral be Zoom? Maybe that's how you can find it. Love it. Great way to wrap up an attribution call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talk about YouTube.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think this has been amazing. Thank you, everyone who has hung out with us today. This has been so much fun. So sorry about the Zoom link problems. Don't worry, the next one is not going to be crazy like that. Shameless plug for the demand community. If you're interested, feel free to sign up on the waitlist at demand.community, dropping it in there. And we are hosting a masterclass for community members with Ben LeBay, and it's going to be all about getting tactical with tests. We only have 20 seats available for it. So if you're interested and you're in the community, check it out. Tuesday, we're going to start opening up seats for that. So final thing, just want to say thank you to Kamala, Nick, and Jason for being a part of this. Thank you to all the attendees. I want to hear your thoughts on it. So if you have any feedback or any ideas, or if you have anyone that you want to see on a webinar soon, email me, just dropped it in the chat, and can't wait to hear from y'all. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye, y'all.